over the weekend on Saturday, the Minnesota Lynx, which is a WNBA team, wanted to make a statement in response to the recent tragedies this nation has felt. Of course, talking about Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, and the shooting in Dallas that affected the police officers that was working a rally that was happening. So they wore T-shirts at their game, and this is what the T-shirts look like. On the front of them, it says, "Change starts with us. Justice and accountability." On the back side, it lists the names of Philando Castile, Alton Sterling. It also displays the Dallas Police Department's emblem, and it also says Black Lives Matter. So this looks pretty uncontroversial to me, but it turns out it was controversial. So there were 4 off-duty police officers that were working the game that night, and they decided to leave their posts, leave that job, and walk out because of what the players wore on their bodies, these T-shirts.
Which, to me, doesn't look like insightful rhetoric.
No, it doesn't.
At all.
No.
But I guess what those cops did, to me, illustrates the false dichotomy surrounding, police reform.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you either accept bad cops as part of the package or no cops at all, which is something that's not expected of any profession.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we talk about, how aggressive cops and the aggressive nature of, some cops puts lives in danger.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, even cops being passive in their demonstration put lives in danger.
You're right.
Because it's not about those players.
No.
Do you see how they just totally ignored the multitude of people they were supposed to protect?
Right.
Because they had a problem with this small group of people.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to leave their job.
Yeah.
Their job is to protect everybody in that arena.
Now, this was voluntary. It wasn't like they were signed there. This was voluntary. They could sign up for this post, but they did sign up for it. So it was their job responsibility at that time to fulfill their job responsibility. Now, if they had an objection to what the players were doing, they could have at a later time said, "Look, we hate what they did. We're not going to do that anymore." And they did do that. But why did you walk out?
Again, because your responsibility is not to the players.
Right.
Your responsibility is to protect the people
the
in
environment.
the environment and the people in that arena who essentially have nothing to do with what those players did. So it seems like a very childish temper tantrum.
Yeah. Lieutenant Bob Kroll, who is the president of the Minnesota Police Federation, which is a union that represents rank and file police officers, he said, "I commend them for it." He commends their actions, leaving their post.
So let's put this in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are people who are angry about police brutality, and not just police brutality, corruption,
right?
Waste in the form of settlements having to be paid out through tax dollars. It's a lot of issues with this, but especially police brutality. People are mad at that.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's juxtapose that with these police officers being mad at a T-shirt.
At a T-shirt.
You know what I'm saying?
Just with some words on it. Now, and there's a lot of rallies that happen, a lot of protests that happen across the country as well, right? A lot of these rallies and protests, the individuals say a lot of things that police officers probably wouldn't like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they leave their post? They don't, right? Because their job responsibility is to ensure the safety and security of that area, right?
Like I said, any other profession that would not be acceptable. Just name a profession.
Yeah.
Whatever profession is running through your head right now, name one where it would be acceptable for somebody to walk off their post because they just saw something that they didn't like.
Yeah. Also, what this Bob Kroll had to say, he was asked about he was asked about a report saying that there were actually seven or eight police officers that walked off their job. In response, he said, they only have 4 officers working the event because the Lynx have such a pathetic draw. So
that's just deflection.
He chose to employ a childish strategy
I was about to say.
and attack the Minnesota Lynx, which is the WNBA team, for their lack of a big audience, a big attendance.
So it doesn't matter what these officers did because, they're not popular anyway. Like, how mature are you?
He also said that if the players didn't change their stance, that it might be all officers that refuse to work their games.
Like I said before, we are supposed to accept, bad officers as a part of the package,
right?
Or no officers at all,
right?
Like they're the ones setting up this false dichotomy. They're the ones creating this division where it's either all or nothing.
Yes,
and that's why people are taking a stand. They are creating this false dichotomy.
On the T-shirt, it displayed the Dallas Police Force, the Dallas Police Department's emblem. So of course, these players are not against police officers. They're against bad policing, like the rest of us are. They are for justice and accountability, like the front of their T-shirt said. Why is it that in people trying to combat the lack of accountability, the lack of justice, that means we hate all cops and we are against all cops? No, we are against bad policing. We are against the bad policing not having some sort of penalty and punishment. It happens far too often. But like what you said, them leaving their job, them leaving their post means that, well, sorry, you can't speak out against that. You have to accept exactly what we do, all of what we do, or you get none of it.
The irony in all this is that, law enforcement, whether it be their policemen, FBI, DA, whatever, judges, prosecutor, whatever, they have political beliefs too. They're human. And I've heard them before. I've heard law enforcement officials, police officers, talking about their politics. And the funny thing is, I hear them talking about how the government is not doing their job. I hear him talking about, whatever, liberals or conservatives or Obama or Clinton or whoever is, in their local office even, at the state level. I hear him talking about corruption, waste, inefficiency. They wish that their government would do X, and they wish that Obama or they wish that Congress would do this or that. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, y'all are talking about reform of the government.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
They're talking about accountability.
They're talking about accountability in the larger government.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
But then they stiff arm any type of accountability and justice
if it comes in
and
their
reform.
if it
when
concerns them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, my mind is blown. And I'm like, what if just Congress just walked off because they didn't like the criticism? Or what if Obama is like, I ain't gonna do this no more. Y'all criticizing me. You know what I'm saying? Y'all trying to hold me accountable. How dare you?
Wouldn't that look weak?
That would look very weak.
Yeah. That would look real weak.
Mm-hmm.
But you have these police officers that walked off the job because they didn't like what these T-shirts said and what these players said too. And I assure you, the players' words were very responsible. They didn't say any. I mean, just because you talk about justice and accountability does not mean you hate all cops. Look, watch this. Black Lives Matter. I'm not a terrorist. That doesn't mean I'm a terrorist. That doesn't mean that I'm against police officers. Like we all say all the time. We believe that most likely most police officers do their job and do their job well. Right?
Yes.
That's likely the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you have some police officers, who cares how small the fraction is? when you have some that don't do their job well, who abuse their status and their power, but then you don't have other officers say that was bad, that's not about us, we shouldn't accept that within our community, within our police community, then how do we know who's bad and who's not? How do we know? How do the people know? If you can't govern yourself and say this is not about this is not who we are. If you can't do that, if it takes a year for the video footage of Laquan McDonald to come out and for them to charge the officer that shot him, if it takes over a year, I think it was 400 days actually. If it takes that long for you to say something's wrong here, then you know you're not on the side of the people.